Hi, everyone. We'll get started in a couple minutes and just want to give everyone an opportunity to get in here. But I want to thank you all for being here first, and I'll say more in a couple minutes. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone else immediately joining, so I'll obviously let people in if they join. But hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Amanda Reynolds. I am the WAG Rules Coordinator for the NAIGC. So basically that means I'm in charge of everything when it comes to WAG rules. I'm also actually the TNT co-coordinator. So if you have any questions about TNT, you can also talk to me about that. I do want, before I forget, to have everyone pop their name and their club in the chat just so that I have that for future reference. And then I also want to introduce Rachel, who is your regional representative, just so that you know who she is and everything about that.
There we go. All right. Hey guys, I'm Rachel. I'm your Southeast Regional Representative. So I'm sure you've probably gotten a billion emails from me. So I just want to say thank you though for all coming out today. It's really important that we get your feedback for all of this. And so I'm just happy we have a pretty good turnout and everything. So if you guys have any questions too throughout the year, or even just today after we're done, I'll stay on for a few minutes. If anyone has any questions, they can always ask. So thanks, Amanda, too, for holding this.
Yeah, of course, because what we wanted to do with this is just make ourselves more accessible to you guys. Something we've gotten feedback in the past is that sometimes there can be a little bit of a disconnect between the organization and the membership. And so we've really tried to make a concerted effort in the last few years. And especially we're making some pretty big decisions when it comes to WAG levels for this year. And so we wanted to discuss it with all of you as well and see what things you think work, what things don't, and what may be helpful in the future. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, because I also want to talk about some like general housekeeping things as well. Make sure that Rachel has your guys's updated contact information. So your club name, your contact information. We're trying to also make a bank of social media handles so that if you guys want to tag us or we can tag you, that we have all of that information and so that we can kind of mutually beneficially follow each other, what disciplines you guys offer, and if there are any membership requirements for your club. I know some clubs, especially college clubs, maybe only are open to students at that school. Some allow anyone to join. So having that information is helpful from an organization perspective so that we can help match people who may be interested in finding a club with clubs in their area. So one of the things that will be, I want to show you guys as a resource that will be helpful is on the registration website. So this is where the registration page where you guys like register for meets. For those that have admin access, and if you don't have admin access, I'll talk about how to get that later on. But under my team, you can click on my club and add as much of this information as possible into the, oh, it logged me out, into this website, because what it will do, there we go, is on our website, there is like the main NAIGC page. there's a list of all of the clubs that have information filled out in here. And so the more information that's filled out, the more information that's easily available to people that might be interested in joining your club that found out about NAIGC but may not have a way of finding your specific club information. So again, that's under my team and then my club, and you can type in your university name in here, whatever it's listed under in the directory. And you can also change this name if for some reason it's incorrect or you want to be called something else. This is also where you purchase your club membership for each year. Our fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th. So everything from now on that's purchased will be valid through the end of June. So everything for this upcoming year's nationals will be listed under 2023. Other resources that are available, we have our WAG rules page. There's one of these pages for each of the rules teams. I am recording this presentation and I can share that link with you guys after the meeting as well. So like I said, this WAG rules page has a lot of great information, a lot of helpful tools. The main documents up here are the rules document. This gets updated every year. So this is still the one from last year. The new one we are expecting to be posted at the beginning of October once everything with this is finalized. And then there's all sorts of drop downs. So we try to make as many helpful tools as possible. So again, this is still for the old requirements, but you see each of the different levels and each of the different events and all of the requirements. And then we have a tool based on guidance as far as generally how many years you've been in the sport versus the recommended level kind of as a starting point. We also have all our policies and then resources for the gymnasts. So we have quick guides. All of this will likely be updated this year as we are expecting to change some levels. But again, this is a great place to go and look if you have any questions. It's a good first place to look, as well as our social media handles. Speaking of social media, one of the most helpful pages that I want to make you guys aware of is the NAIGC Rules Info Instagram. This is something we started last year around this time, so it's been going for about a year. But we just have helpful, basically tips and tricks as far as the rules, the levels for all three disciplines, MAG, WAG, and TNT. So for example, this is a post from last week that shows turn elements on beam. So you can see the different skill values. So if you're looking for maybe a bead dance skill that you need to add to your routine, here's a list of some of the common bead dance or options for different things as well. So really helpful place to look and start. And if you have any suggestions for posts or things that you would like to see content-wise, we're more than happy to take those suggestions. We're always looking for more content. If you are looking for any other social media accounts, naigc.org/social media, this has all of our social media accounts linked into it. And then for one last thing, as far as links, the registration website, like I said, if you don't have admin access, you can email info@naigc.org, and that will help. We'll be able to get you admin access for your club if your previous officers weren't able to give you administrative access. So before I forget, let me post all of these links in the chat. I hope, yeah, it looks like they all linked. So that's all of those pages that I just showed you are in those links. And there will also be an email that gets sent out to you guys after this meeting with all of those links as well. Next thing on the docket. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is what you guys use as far as our rules are concerned, because we want to make sure that we are creating the best resources and using the best levels to help all of you and make things sustainable for you and your club. If at any point, feel free to unmute and answer questions, or if you want to just type them in the chat, that's totally fine as well. I have the chat open, so I'll try and see and read those. So the first kind of question that I have is, what levels in general do you guys compete? And do you guys feel that the levels that we offer meet your guys' team's needs? Feel free to answer in either unmute or in the chat. Okay, development 6 through 8. Okay. Okay. One question that I would have for clubs that don't offer multiple levels, is it because all of your athletes are generally in the same skill level, or is it that there's not enough people to warrant competing in different levels? Just kind of, I guess my question would be, why don't you offer more levels? Okay, not enough people, and that's fair. It's understandable. Again, we've tried to make it more open in our rules and such to be able to create smaller teams. So as far as a team score for meets and nationals, it just requires 3 people per level, or 3 scores per event per level. So not necessarily 3 people, but a minimum of 3 people. And so that is something, I don't know that we can really go too much smaller than that, but it is a change that we've made in the past few years to try and encourage smaller teams and diversify levels to make sure that everybody's competing the level that's right for them. The next question I have is, how, from a communication standpoint, how can we best communicate the rules information to you guys? So things like policy changes, the rules updates, like the big massive changes, like how do you most easily see those, or what would be the best way to send those to you guys? Do you like the announcement emails? Do you think things coming from the RRs or social media, things like that? What do you think is most helpful to you guys? Emails. Okay. Good to know. And then in general, what resources do you guys find the most useful? Have you guys been to our website? Have you seen all of those resources on our website before? Had you guys seen the Instagram posts? Like what things that we have done do you engage with the most or find the most useful? The polls on the Instagram story. Okay. That actually backs up what we have seen, because the polls on our Instagram story have actually gotten more engagement than everything. But yeah, so that's also part of it, is just making people aware of the resources that exist so that we can kind of share all of the information with you guys in the way that is best for you. And feel free to put in the chat now, or if you have like a longer response, feel free to email us later. But what information do you guys feel like you're missing in terms of the rules or competition structure that you feel like you don't have enough information about, or you would like to know more about, so that we can make sure to address those questions or concerns or anything like that? No, you do not need to be enrolled in a school to participate. So one of the things that we have, now that I'm reading this, I'm not sure if this is a question specifically for this or just a question for like a post in the future, but no, you don't need to be enrolled in a school to participate. We're moving to a system where people can register as an independent collegiate athlete or as an independent community athlete where they don't have to be affiliated with school. We're hoping that this will replace the NAIGC alumni so that there's a differentiation between collegiate and community athletes when we're announcing awards and such. So that is something that will be really helpful, and we'll make a point of posting once that decision is finalized. So with that being said, we're going to get to the meat and potatoes of this meeting. Actually, there is now one question. So alumni can compete with a collegiate team as long as your school permits that. That team would then move into the community division. If there's any community athletes, so non-full-time students on a team, that team does get moved to the community division. So if you wanted to compete in the collegiate division, the alumni would have to be a separate team or separate individuals. Hope that answered the question. So like I said, want to get to the bulk of this meeting, which is the level decision. So I want to talk about a couple of different things. So we're really looking at completely restructuring how we do our levels. So one of the things that we have talked about is that from an organizational perspective, we need to go down to 4 levels. We learned at nationals this year that us offering 5 levels at this point isn't sustainable either from an organizational perspective. Basically, we don't have enough volunteers to be able to functionally manage running 5 WAG levels in addition to 3 MAG levels and TNT. It's a lot. And because we're still bouncing back in terms of membership from COVID, levels and awards categories ended up being too small. So for context, we had about 1,500 athletes in Daytona, which was our last pre-COVID nationals. This year we had about 1,200. And by then diversifying that WAG population across 5 levels as opposed to 3 levels, which is what we had in 2019, it made a lot of the awards categories, especially the community awards categories, very small. And that just made them less competitive. And that was something that when we got feedback from the national survey was something that people really didn't like. They wanted more grouped levels so that they were more competitive and you really felt like you were competing against the best of the best in that level. So we need to go down to 4 levels. And this, along with USAG, made their changes. They work on a quadrennium system. So their levels now will go from 2022 to 2026, and then 2026 to 2032. And I think I did that math right. And so they made their level changes this year as well. So we were going to need to reevaluate levels anyway. And one thing that has been asked for several years, and we're finally at a point where both from a membership perspective and from an organizational perspective, to offer Excel. And in general, Excel, for those that aren't familiar or aren't as familiar, is a more laid back USAG program compared to the developmental program. So the developmental program is the numbered levels 6 through 10. And then the Excel system, it has Excel bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, and now Sapphire is being test piloted this year for the first year. And so with that being said, we wanted to kind of experiment and see where these Excel levels may fit. For those that may not have been aware, Excel or NAIGC developmental was very similar to Excel Silver in the first place. When we first created developmental, it's because Excel hadn't really gotten its footing yet in the USAG system, and we needed a level that was similar, but we wanted something that catered directly to our collegiate and adult population. As Excel kind of grew and we kind of manipulated how developmental worked, the base requirements for Excel became Excel Silver versus developmental were essentially the same. There were some minor differences, specifically on the upper end of the level. But so we are proposing to change developmental to Excel Silver. From a functional perspective, not much changes with that. Let me scroll down. So like I said, the base requirements are essentially the same. I will show on here. This is a chart, and I will link this chart before I forget, because I forgot to do it in the last meeting that I had. This is the link to this form that I'm showing you, and you guys should have access to be able to see it. So you can see in the far left column here is developmental and then Excel Silver. So for the most part, developmental required 6 A's, Silver only requires 5. The special requirements are essentially the same because, like I said, that's what we kind of had adapted them to. The difference is, as it currently shows, in developmental, we allowed all A's and B's, and in Excel Silver, only A's are allowed. However, one thing that we are discussing within the WAG rules team is to allow B dance or specific B skills. And so for beam and floor, it would be B dance. And then for bars, it would be clear hip to horizontal, or any of the circling skills to horizontal, as well as something else that I don't remember offhand. But specific B skills would be allowed as something that we're talking about. And that would make it more less difficult to be able to get from silver to platinum, which is the next proposed level. One of the reasons we also wanted to convert developmental to an existing Excel level is to make it so that it would be easier for clubs and meets to find judges, because judges are likely more familiar with Excel as a whole. And then because they have existing standards for Excel, the score should then be more accurate. And like I said, because there are more difficulty restrictions in Silver as compared to the old developmental, we are looking at making some modifications to the upper end to allow a little bit more difficulty in developmental. I guess I should do beam and floor then too, just so that everybody can kind of see where everything falls. So again, it's mostly the same. All the skill work or all the special requirements are the same. It's just that difference between A, B only, and then allowing B dance. And the same with floor as well. So all of those are essentially the same. The next proposed level change would be condensing level 6 and 7 to platinum. Again, this is where that consolidation is coming from, because we need to get rid of one level somewhere, and Excel Platinum has a little bit more variety and a little bit more flexibility than some of the numbered levels do. So the base requirements are pretty similar in the routine skill level between 6 and 7 versus Platinum. However, Platinum is a little bit less restrictive on the low end, and then allows more flexibility on the upper end as well. One example of that is vault. So for 6 and 7, as I'm sure you guys are all aware, there's 3 options. There's the front handspring, the half-on timer, and the Yurchenko timer. But for Excel Platinum, there's actually, it of course doesn't tell me, several options for essentially not repulsion twisting vaults. So front handspring, Yashamita, half on, and the Yurchenko timer, and then various twisting versions of that can upgrade the start value from 9.7 to 10.0. So it allows those that may be working twisting vaults to be able to compete those, but you're still not at a significant disadvantage if you don't twist those vaults. In terms of bars, it keeps the same difficulty restrictions as USAG 7, so you can do all A's and B's, and then clear hip, stalder, and toe circle to handstand, along with, we are planning on allowing the cast handstand pirouette. In Platinum as well, kind of like we talked about raising the difficulty restrictions in developmental, we want to do that for Platinum as well, to make sure that anyone that was competing in 7 can continue to compete in Platinum. But specifically the special requirements are a lot easier. So USAG did this year change some of the requirements. So USAG 6 used to cast to 45 above horizontal, and 7 had to cast a handstand. They dropped each of those back. So 6 is just above horizontal and 7 is to 45 above. And that's what this cast above horizontal or any skill finishing in clear supports. You could do a clear hip to horizontal and that would count as well. It wouldn't have to specifically be a cast. In platinum, and then for a circling skill, it does not have to be group 3-6-7. So 3-6-7 basically refers to clear hip, toe circle, or shoulder circle. In this example, platinum, you would be able to count a giant as one of those, or as that circling skill. Platinum requires a kip, but doesn't require a bar change or a second circling element. And then it just has to be any high bar dismount. It doesn't necessarily have to be a salto. You could do the swing half turn dismount, because I do know flyaways tend to be one of the more difficult things for people to get on bars with that. Similar story on beam. Full turn is the same across the board. For the dance series, in platinum, it only has to be 120 degrees instead of 180 degrees. And one of the benefits of Excel in that is that anything meeting or beyond that requirement, so that 120 degrees, does not get a deduction. So while technically in 6 and 7, you could do a split leap that reaches 150, it does technically meet the requirement, but it gets a deduction. That same 150-degree split leap would not receive a deduction in platinum. The Excel Platinum acro requirement is the same as 6, but again, you could do the same series that you did in 7 in platinum without issue. And then for platinum, it just, again, has to be a dismount. It doesn't have to be a salto dismount. Floor is... again, keeps the same difficulty restrictions, unlimited dance, and no C acro. Floor is a little bit more difficult than the previously existing 6 was. There are a couple commonly used easier passes like front handspring round off that would have counted in silver, or not silver, would have counted in 6 that don't count in platinum, but still for the most part, they're pretty manageable. This acro pass, round off back tuck, front handspring, front tuck, basically anything other than an isolated salto that has a salto would count for that. And then this second one, you could either have just 2 flight skills, so round off back handspring, front handspring, front handspring, front handspring round off, or an isolated B salto, which would be like a front pike. All of those would be available. So a fly spring is basically a front handspring that takes off of 2 feet. So picture a back handspring takes off of 2 feet, lands on 2 feet. It's the same. So it'd be like a front handspring that you punch into, if that makes sense. And yeah, so for the most part, things are still manageable in platinum. This is probably the most difficult difference in getting rid of 6, 7 and going towards platinum. But for the most part, still seems manageable. With all of that being said, does anybody have any questions or thoughts about replacing the existing developmental 6, 7 with these 2 new levels? And again, feel free to unmute or post in the chat. Oh, one thing I did forget to mention earlier. So one of the questions that we've gotten before is, in this system, we're skipping Excel Gold, which is an existing Excel level. And because we need to condense to 4 levels, we needed to basically make a level cut somewhere. And because of that, we wanted to make sure that we kept the barrier to entry pretty low and make it available to people that are complete beginners to gymnastics, but also make sure that there's still a manageable jump from whatever that lowest level is to level 8 or potentially Excel Diamond, which is what we'll talk about in a second. Before I move on, last call for questions. Okay. That's good to hear. And we do have a survey at the end that I'll send out at the very end and that you guys can fill out to just kind of get a feel for, in general, where people feel like they feel like the levels should be. And then obviously we'll take all of that into account as we make our final decision over the next few weeks. Okay, so I think I forgot to mention this at the very beginning, but we're planning on keeping level 9 as is without any changes. The only other potential change that we have talked about is deciding between Excel Diamond and level 8. And I can hear people already. We've gotten a lot of feedback that level 8 is your most popular level. Why would you consider getting rid of it? And one of the things that we have talked about is if we're already transitioning to multiple Excel levels, does it make sense to add more Excel levels and keep things more consistent across the board? Like I said, we're not getting rid of level 9, but it is something that we've talked about potentially in the future, depending on exact skill restrictions and such. However, we want to make sure that we're offering things that meet the needs of membership, and that's all of you. So I really encourage, if you guys have any thoughts or questions, feel free to post them in the chat at whatever point. The biggest differences between Excel Diamond and level 8 is that in general, the variety and skill level within Excel Diamond is a lot wider than the skill level in level 8, mostly on the low end. So the skill requirements for Diamond are somewhere between 7 and 8, but they also allow people to compete an unlimited number of Cs and up to 1D in Excel Diamond. And one of the reasons that Excel Diamond is on the table is because the requirements on the low end are a lot more flexible and allow more people to kind of meet the requirements, while also allowing for kind of that very wide range. Because like some of you said earlier, you don't have enough people to be able to compete multiple teams. And so finding a level that can kind of incorporate a lot of people would also be really useful. So I want to kind of go over some of the differences between Excel Diamond and level 8. Let me scroll to, so each of the two systems have both pros and cons from both a gymnastic standpoint and a logistical standpoint. Level 8, like I said, is most familiar to people. It's the level that we've been using and it's our most popular level, but it can also be somewhat restrictive. And because the requirements are a little bit on the higher side, it may be more difficult to get from Excel Platinum to level 8. On the other side, Excel Diamond offers, like I said, more flexibility, but it is less familiar and may leave some of the top level 8s that don't want to compete in Diamond because they like being in that USAG high level system, may leave them without a place to go if they can't meet level 9 requirements. So for the most part, kind of things that are across the board, in level 8, you are required to count one more skill. So Excel Diamond requires 7 skills and level 8 requires 8 skills. And then in level 8, it requires 4 counting bees. And then in Excel Diamond, it only requires 2 counting bees. So you have to count more, have more bee skills in your routine. So that's across all 3 events, bars, beam, and floor. And then also on that aspect, vaults generally are about 4 to 5 tenths lower in start value for level 8. So kind of just reviewing the differences between Diamond and 8. So again, you're looking at these 2 columns. In Diamond, instead of a bar change, you just have to get a skill that finishes in clear support 45 degrees above horizontal. So it still doesn't even need to be a handstand. And again, it'd have to have a B 360-degree circling skill, but it doesn't have to be from group 367. So again, it could be a giant, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a clear hip, stalder, or toe circle. The additional B skill doesn't necessarily have to have turn or flight. So it could be a secondary circling skill. And then for the dismount, it could be either a salto dismount, so that would be the same as USAG 8, or it could be a B high bar dismount. So it could be like a toe on underswing with a twist, but no salto is an option that would not be eligible in 8, but would count in diamond. For beam, for the most part, they're similar. Again, full turn is required pretty much across the board from level 6 upward. It does require a dance series, so even split leap straight jump would count. And it only has to reach 150 degrees instead of the 180 degrees, the same as 6-7. And the acro requirement for diamond is the same as level 7. So it would be that it has this in level 8, your acro series would have to have flight, but in diamond, you just have to have a series and flight, but they don't have to be in this, they don't have to be together. And then like we talked about on bars, it could be a salto or an aerial dismount. And then in 8, it would just have to be, it would have to be a counting a skill. For floor, this is probably, again, where it's the most different and would require probably some changes to existing level 8 floor routines if we were to go to diamond. For the most part, the dance passage is the same, except for the split position is different. It's just 150 versus 180. But the two main differences in Excel Diamond is that you have to have a B turn and a B salto, which are not requirements in level 8. However, most level 8 floor routines either already have those skills in them, or that requirement would not be difficult for most people to achieve. I think the most common thing would be that a level 8 floor doesn't have a B turn necessarily, but for most people, adding a B turn, adding a half, making it a 1.5 turn, or making it a wolf turn or a leg up turn, for most people isn't too difficult. On the other side, we're then getting rid of the need for the connected salto pass, so you don't need to front or front through to back tuck or whip layout. None of that is required. You just have to have 2 different saltos, one of which is a B, and then again, for level 8, you would have to have 3 different saltos, and that again isn't the case in Excel Diamond. So again, with that being said, does anybody have any thoughts or questions or concerns if we were to go towards Excel Diamond versus level 8? And again, I want to reiterate, none of this is finalized yet. We're just kind of trying to get a feel from membership from all of you guys, which level you think would meet the needs of your clubs and meet the needs of your organization the most. And we'll take all of this into account when we make our final decision over the next month or so. Okay, prefer level 8. It's fair. Level 8's more competitive. And so like Abby said, there in the minimum requirements between Diamond and 9, there is a large gap. One thing I do want to point out is that most existing level 8 routines, pretty much all existing level 8 routines, would still be able to be competed in Diamond, and you could even compete a little bit more difficulty because you are able to and allowed to far exceed the minimum requirements for any given level, because at least for Diamond, for the most part, you're not going to be hitting those maximum difficulty restrictions because too many not too many 8s would be in a position where they'd be competing D elements. Diamond. Yeah, and that's fair as well. And like I said, there is the gradation of being able to compete many different skill levels within Diamond. And the other thing with 9 is that many athletes can still compete level 9, maybe not even meeting all the special requirements, but still doing quite well. I know of one athlete that regularly competes level 9 without a beam series at all, just does not compete a beam series whatsoever and still regularly places quite well within the organization. So again, it's not for everybody, but it is something to talk about. Yeah, and that is something we've talked about and are considering, that because of the wide range, there is a wide range, and it does kind of feel like there could be 2 different levels, but most of the people that are competing towards the like minimum requirements of platinum, and then there would be the people that are competing towards the higher end of platinum, and those that are competing against the higher end of platinum are likely the ones that are wanting to try and contend for medals. Like they're the top level, they're the top existing level 8s that aren't quite ready for 9. And so they're the ones competing for the medals and the titles. And then those towards the lower end of platinum would be there because they're having fun and they're enjoying it and they want to compete with their friends and compete with their team. Again, I don't want to come across dismissive, because all of these points are points that we've talked about and are taking into consideration, but I do want to kind of address them as well. Anyone else? It is an interesting thought, adding some sort of bonus for meeting higher requirements. That's 8. Okay. As far as benefits of doing harder skills, as it is currently written, not specifically, other than in overall perspective of judges. As I'm sure all of you are aware, judges are human and intentionally or unintentionally do often reward difficulty, whether it's technically listed in the code or not. So as it is technically written, no. However, those that go far and above tend to maybe be slightly forgiven on execution to reward difficulty. But again, that's not necessarily a hard and fast rule. It kind of is more up to the judges. And yeah, it is very much personal preference in terms of, would you rather compete the higher skills and maybe or maybe not be rewarded to them, versus competing easier skills with the maybe more form and then not receiving that potential inadvertent personal bonus, if that makes sense. Anyone else? Yes, and that is a possibility, and it would be up to the athlete or the team's perspective in terms of risk reward. And that is something to be considered at pretty much all of the levels as well. I did go ahead and put the survey link in the chat if you guys want to fill that out. Again, I'll send it out in an email along with pretty much all of the links that I've posted as well. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to stick around. I have 15 minutes until the next meeting starts. So I'm more than happy to stick around for 15 minutes or so. But unless anybody else has anything that they would like to put in the chat, then you guys are free to go. And thank you again for joining and taking time out of your day to come join. Like I said, we're expecting to post the public decision on the levels by October 1st, and they'll go out in an email, social media, on the website. It'll go all the places. So you guys will have an opportunity to see that, and we'll make sure to communicate that as best as possible.
Yeah, and also just one last thing before everyone hops off. If you have any questions, I'll also stay on for questions related to this or questions just related to the upcoming season and the year coming up. But also, if you think of anything later on or after talking to your teams and everything, you have any feedback you want to give, you can always email it to me or email it to Amanda. I'll make sure it gets to her so she has all the information too. So just always feel free to send me anything at any time.
Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining. And again, like we said, we'll stick around for a bit, but I will end the recording now.